we'll quickly run through kind of who we have here today. So my name is Dahi de Butler. I'm Chief Marketing Officer of a company called ParkOffice. We work very closely providing kind of parking software to smart offices. And I suppose why we're kind of involved in conversations like this is really since the pandemic has started, we kind of have a solution which helps people get back to the office quicker and safer. And we've, I suppose, had a lot of interest and are having a lot of conversations in this broader space of how to manage commuting in a severely disrupted environment. So maybe we'll jump to yourself, Alexander, if you want to give a bit of context on yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aleksander Szybilski. I'm the head of workplace in Poland. So actually in Cushman & Wakefield. So actually I'm helping companies in getting back to work. So this is one feature of my work. And before the pandemic and also right now, I'm helping companies to create a workplace that will actually fit the business needs and aspiration of the companies, and currently also helping companies in changing the models from traditional to more activity-based working with change management activities and involving employees. So that's my part.
Great. And Joy, do you want to tell us a little bit about your own background?
Sure. My name is Joy Steffen. I am the founder and CEO of 20 Chairs, which is a consultancy based in New York City. We work with landlords and corporate real estate leaders as they navigate change, which we're certainly seeing these days, primarily working on change management efforts, helping folks to understand how the workplace is experienced and what can be done beneath the surface to strengthen the experience so that landlords can attract, retain, and satisfy their clients while they're working away from the physical workspace and when they return.
Cool. So I know Will is due to be with us. He's slightly delayed. When he pops in, we can obviously get his background. But what's great today, I suppose, is to have such a diverse geographical spread. Oh, here's Will, just in the nick of time. So Will, I think the time zones caught Will on the hop there.
Yeah, the calendar invite came in for my time zone, so I was completely unaware. I do apologize.
No problem. So we just done a whistle stop tour of Alexander and Joy and myself around kind of our backgrounds. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Will.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Will Easton. I work for an independent consultancy around FM and workplace called 180. Myself, I come from a in-house FM background over between 12 and 15 years ago. So kind of cut my teeth kind of working in-house in a fintech company before going out on my own in 2014. So I've spent the past 6 years working on various contracts in different sectors all across the UK. So I've kind of got a varied and generalist role of the workplace and facilities world.
Brilliant stuff. So I was just saying as you were joining there, Will, that one of the great things we have here today is a very diverse geographical mix. So I suppose just wanted to take a little whistle stop tour around and maybe if you guys want to let us know how, I suppose, COVID has affected the commercial real estate landscape in your various different markets. So maybe if we start with yourself, Alexander.
So actually, we see a big impact on people going back to offices, and especially big corporations are actually putting their policies all around the world. So similar for US, for Poland, for UK and other countries. And we are seeing companies deciding not to go back to the office till the end of the year. Some of them already informed their employees that they will be able to go back in the middle of 2021. So there is a resistance, and we see that companies are hesitating to go back. However, we see few of the companies, also my company, going back to the office and looking how to do it safely. And one of the things that Cushman implemented was the 6 feet office concept, which was connected with visual branding and with creating protocols for the space and how to move and how to use the space, which is already done by most of the consultant companies and also internally by different clients or companies. But we see that the process is more complex, and it's hard to actually stop the behaviors that were before the pandemic. So, for example, I don't know, people saying hello or getting closer to each other without being, it's not natural to keep the distance. That's my opinion in regards, if you have people that you know and you like in the office, something that was created, I don't know, during thousands of years, so the social behaviors of people, it's hard to say, come on guys, stop now, you need to have the proper distance. So actually we are trying to we are not forcing people to come back, so actually coming back is for people who want to come back. And
cool, Alexander. I might just jump because obviously just conscious
Sure.
of time. So,
Sure.
So Joy, are you kind of seeing similar in kind of New York City, that it's kind of come back if and as you want, or are you guys kind of seeing, is it still kind of blanket bans over there, or how's it kind of playing out for you guys?
What we've seen on the part of the landlords is a concentrated effort to focus on the sanitation and the security technology that's going to create a sense of environmental safety for employees. And we're still not seeing how, what's going to be needed beyond the hardware and software solutions that will help to draw people back into the workplace. And I think, people need to feel emotionally safe as well as physically safe before they're going to feel comfortable returning to the office. And there was a time when offices were not allowed to be open at all. That's no longer the case. People are welcome to go to the office, and in limited numbers they are. But the last statistics that I'd seen, they were prepared to be open at 10% capacity, and on a day-to-day basis across the city, they are at 2% capacity. So yeah, there's a big challenge there to, I suppose, get confidence back. What are you kind of seeing in the UK market, Will?
Well, I think kind of reassuringly, we're seeing a community that's not forcing people to do things that they're not comfortable with. So a lot of companies, their message, and I was speaking to one of my old employees actually a couple of weeks ago, and their kind of blanket message is to their staff: you come back when you feel comfortable. The people that are managing these workplaces and these facilities are doing everything in their powers to ensure that people feel physically safe, psychologically safe, etc., etc. So there's a few exceptions where people are kind of beating the drum that everybody has to be back, but these are rare. So what I'm seeing is definitely a community feel of getting people back into the office safely at the correct time and for the correct reasons.
Yeah, no, it's definitely very interesting. And I think touching on kind of 2 points you've kind of mentioned there, definitely something we're seeing here in the Irish market is, I suppose, larger global employers are potentially a little slower to return. I think a lot of Indigenous employers are probably getting back a little quicker, particularly in the SME sector. Although we're back now in Dublin, where I am, we're back on kind of a relatively strict kind of lockdown at the moment. But I would think what's very interesting from kind of a global perspective is, for the first time over the last week or so, I think we've started to see maybe the winds change a little. So previously there had been a lot, Will, as you've mentioned, of this community and safety is of optimum importance. But I don't know, did you spot the Google announcement over the last day or so? All employees are meant to return to the country in which they work. I know that Netflix came out there last week and said we're chomping at the bit to get back. And I know with a lot of companies are suffering a lot from cybersecurity issues. So I think cybersecurity is 4 times cybersecurity attacks, just because the cost and difficulty of having decentralized cybersecurity operations is massive. So I think we're starting to see forces dragging people back towards the offices. And I suppose that then raises a question of I know Alexander has touched on certain things around how that internal office experience will manifest. But obviously, we're here to chat about how people are going to travel to and from the office. So I'm not sure what you guys are seeing on the ground from clients, or is commuting something they're kind of worried about, or is it a case of sanitization is front and center, and they haven't really got around to thinking about managing those journeys just yet?
So maybe I will start.
Yeah, go for it.
So actually, traveling and commute is an issue. Like from the surveys that we did with clients that were trying to get back to the office, that was one of the major on the list from employee perspective. So actually, commute was a red flag for many employees. We know that some of our clients were actually considering leasing bicycles to employees, and actually getting the bicycles for the employees to actually support them in actually getting to the office via the bike. So it was quite interesting. And also we have examples of having yours being implemented in offices. So actually the utilization of parking seats spaces is actually correct, and that people that normally didn't have the access to the parking spot will actually have it, because now many of the parking spaces are really empty. So actually people who might be wanting to travel to work by car actually will be allowed. But don't get me wrong, I'm not a fan of traveling in a city by car, especially by one person getting to work. And actually, like, supporting this is not the right way. So to be honest, I also, like, for example, I see apps like for example electrical scooters, and I also seen clients and also my companies supporting an app for employees, that actually employees get a app that allows them to rent a electrical scooter, and company pays for the ride. So that is something that is also visible.
Cool. And are you kind of seeing likewise, Joy, or what's the kind of main moves you're kind of seeing in the US on the commuter management front at the moment?
Yeah, like Alexander, we are seeing people getting increasingly innovative. They're planning to get around, not just for their commuting patterns, but also just for their day-to-day life. We've seen, particularly in the last 2 months, an increase in car traffic, scooter traffic, electric. We now have Revels for the first time, which are they're comparable to Vespas, but they can be checked out with an app in the same way that just the standard bikes were. Also seen some unicycles and skateboards and things of that nature. I think perhaps one difference here is that there continues to be question about who should take for the commuting. If alternative commuting is going to be part and parcel, is this a service that landlords are going to use to bring people back, or this, in the corporate tenant? I think it's depending to some extent on, if the company has no sense of urgency around returning to the office, landlords are finding themselves, wondering how far they need to go to simplify the challenges. And
so that's a very good point, Will, that Joy just raised around, I suppose, commuter management. Who is responsible? Landlord, tenant? Is it the individual?
I suppose that there's an argument to say whoever's in charge of the workplace experience has got a big part to play in this, because if the commute is stressful and full of challenges that somebody's going to want to overcome, it can either put their day on a really good footing or start something that sets them up in a bad mood. So their entire workplace experience and the the hours they spend carrying out the activities they do at their place is affected by this beginning part of their day, if they're commuting at the beginning. So I think there's that, whoever, if it is, the head of HR, the head of facilities, head of workplace, if it is the individual, whoever's in charge of creating a really good workplace experience has to factor in the transit. And it has to be inclusive as well, because a lot of people might not drive. A lot of people live in urban areas, rural areas. People can't afford to use public transport, or can't afford to have their own car, or afford to park. There's so many factors. And it really needs to ensure that as soon as that person wakes up in the day, ready for their day ahead, they're getting, when they leave their house or wherever they are to start their day of work, that piece of the puzzle has to be as smooth as everything else. Kind of using the office, negating the office, all the settings they need to carry out certain activities until they finish the day and go home. It's no longer about just stepping through the door, and that's where the responsibility starts for workplace experience. It's the whole package.
Yeah, and I suppose what's kind of interesting there then, from looking at it from a workplace experience angle, is really what can individual employers do, in that we have large macro things at play here, obviously COVID being the biggest, but we've declining confidence in public transport being a massive issue. Prior to COVID, I suppose, even ourselves, our primary use with clients before COVID was to help them reduce the amount of parking they provided at work. And we've seen a total 180 flip on that now. And companies who had been very worried about environmental footprint are now kind of saying, how can we maximize occupancy, and how can we get as many people in as possible? In a world where people don't want to take public transport, and I think a lot of the great mobility schemes we have been seeing, e-scooters, bike share, car share, all of these were very much enabled by public transport being the primary carrier of load for getting people close to the office and potentially finishing their journey or getting out and about to meetings during the day using alternate transport. Like, what can companies do to, I suppose, incentivize more bike sharing, incentivize cycling to work, e-bikes, I suppose, to manage parking better? Like what can be done? Maybe if I open that out and whoever wants to jump.
I want to also just comment on one thing, one additional thing, which is a paradox, because we also, in our surveys, we ask employees, what is the biggest benefit of working from home and actually being allowed to work remotely in a scale that is currently happening? And one of the biggest benefits on the top of the list is actually saving time on the commute. That's mentioned by employees. But when we ask the second question, do you work more or less than compared to before COVID? Most, like around between 60 and 70% of employees say they work more. So actually the time which is saved on commute, they spend on working, which is something which is a bit of absurd. And in the long term, it actually can take you to being burned out. So this is a factor that is also quite important.
Definitely. Joy, what do you think on actionable steps, I suppose, that employers in particular can take to build that confidence, and I suppose, can they improve their facilities? Do they need to invest in upgrades, or is it software, or like what's going to give them the solution, I suppose, that builds that employee confidence to get them back?
I mean, ultimately, I think the biggest challenge is sort of what real estate leaders, whether you're on the corporate or on the commercial side, what they've been responsible for. The net return is being called further into question than ever before. And I think ultimately, we were speaking earlier about the workplace experience and who is responsible for that. I think Will was touching on that. I don't think that landlords can afford to not be invested in the workplace experience anymore. The very, the value of their asset is directly tied to the people in their buildings and the broader environment that they provide beyond the bricks and mortar, but moving more into programmatic things. I mean, prior to COVID, some of the ways, people were experimenting with ways to incentivize, and we were seeing great success with challenges happening in buildings between different tenants, to see who could have the most bikers in a given, week, month, etc. And other things just to sort of strengthen a sense of community among and between the tenants, not just between the company and their employees. And in doing so, it created a place that people were comfortable going back to. We focused a lot on comfort, but I think comfort comes from familiarity, which is a double-edged sword, right? Because the more comfortable and familiar you become with people, then the less formal you are, the more you're likely to, start to, that 6 foot starts to turn to 5 feet, 4 feet, etc. And then we start to get into trouble. But ultimately, I think it's people that are going to draw people back into the office, not, a particular coffee bar, at least in the near term. So.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm just conscious of time there. We've kind of run out there. So Will, I think, is having internet issues too. So he's just he's dropped off and now he's back again. But no, thanks very much to everyone.
I don't know if it was me or everybody else, but
yeah, no, I think it was you were dropping off. But we were just going to wrap up there now because we've just hit time there. So thanks very much to everyone for their time. If you want to pick up with any of the speakers, I'm sure they'd be more than happy if you reach out to them via LinkedIn. Yeah, sure. Hopefully we'll hear from you again in the future. Cheerio. Bye now.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.